Taryn, I'm so happy to have you here for this conversation, and I'm really interested to hear what you've got to say. A lot of our audience, a lot of my clients, even our online clients, probably 90% of them are women. Mm-hmm. And a lot of our listeners are living in larger bodies. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to talk to you about body positivity and embrace and how that relates to taking care of yourself with physical movement, eating, and how it relates to weight and weight loss. Mm-hmm. So I think a big question, I could think of a million clients that have this question, is people say to me, yeah, Glenn, I kind of get that, but to embrace, I need to lose weight. Mm. What do you say to people like that?
Yeah, well, no, not at all. I mean, there's embracing. It's a philosophy about how you love and respect and have endless gratitude for your body. It's got nothing to do with weight loss, weight gain, a number on a scale. It's finding what feels good for you. And we know a lot of people who have come on the embrace journey and have actually lost weight. Mm-hmm. And it's just been a bit of a byproduct of living their best life, you know, for a better word, just getting out there, enjoying their bodies and eating foods intuitively and mindfully, and then they happen to lose weight. Mm-hmm. And if that feels good for them, great. Mm-hmm. But again, there's really no rules around weight loss, weight gain, and embracing. It's just do what feels good for you. Mm-hmm. Look, I've had people also come to me and say, I want to lose weight. Mm-hmm. I embrace, or I'm learning to embrace, but I want to lose weight.
This is a lot of our people.
Yeah, and I think that it's okay to have that motivation, and as long as you are loving in that process. Right. I think that's the real key difference. Mm-hmm. You know, we spoke about it before, say with me and sugar and diabetes. I think it's the exact kind of example. You know, I'm mindful of how much sugar I eat because there's diabetes in my family, and I love chocolate so much, but I sometimes go, okay, Taryn, that's enough. Put the chocolate down. You've had enough. I think it's the same thing with weight loss and embracing. You can do it in a loving way, not in a fearful way.
Yep. It's so interesting you should say that, because I think that, you know, we talk about dieting versus intuitive eating, and often people will come to me and say, Glenn, what is this? What's a meal plan? Is a meal plan or preparing my food, is that dieting or is that intuitive eating? And I think the more that I learn about intuitive eating, the more I understand it is actually about the why. Mm-hmm. If I'm limiting my sugar intake because sugar's a bad food and it's going to make me gain weight, then I'm kind of in a diet headspace.
Yes.
But if I'm limiting my sugar because, like you, there's a family history of diabetes and you know that a lot of sugar is not going to be really good for your body, then it's intuitive eating.
Yeah, and it's respectful.
Yeah.
That's the key difference, is I'm just respecting what I know. I'm respecting the knowledge that I have. And I'm also respecting how my body feels. I certainly know when I eat, you know, ridiculous amounts of chocolate, when I've not been mindfully eating that chocolate. Yep. I know I go on this crazy high and then this awful low. So, yeah.
So you don't have necessarily a problem with that motivation that a lot of people do have, that hey, I do want to lose some weight, but you would say it's about the process that they go through. And I think one thing that we've got to be mindful of is that sometimes there is sort of diet behavior and there is exercise that is a punishment, and we can sort of veil that like it's self-love. So we've got to be sure that people are not just saying that they're doing something different, that they're actually fundamentally doing something different. Because I get this a lot of the time in my sessions.
Yeah, for sure.
Clients will be doing like a 1,200 calorie meal plan and smashing themselves at the gym 6 days a week and kind of try and fool me.
Yeah,
They're like, this is body loving. I'm like, oh, I don't know that it kind of is.
Yeah, that's right. Oh. And I think do your clients then know? Do they know when you call them out on that? Are they like, know. Okay, yes it is.
Yeah.
And isn't it nice for them to have someone just to remind them of that? I bet they kind of go, yeah, that doesn't actually feel good, because it's the treadmill all over again, right? Yep. It's just the weight cycling that they're on, but they're just doing it, you know, in a way that doesn't appear to be a diet.
Absolutely, because there are so many diets that aren't sold as diets.
Yes.
You know, the dieting industry's got smart enough now that they sell diets as non-diets.
Yes.
And if we look at it, you know, from a psychologist language, when you're making a food choice, if the number one focus is how's this food choice going to affect my weight, then you're dieting.
Yes.
It doesn't matter whether it's a detox or a 12-week program or a cleanse or however you call it, you're dieting.
Yep.
So
I think what we need to get people to keep coming back to is how they feel in their bodies. So, you know, when you're talking about weight loss and someone says, look, I want to lose weight because I felt better, you know, a few years ago.
Yep.
I'm not sure. I certainly wouldn't get anyone to focus on the weight loss and the kilos and what's been lost, but maybe what they were doing back then. You know, what was your lifestyle like back then? Were you just, you know, moving for pleasure and going for walks and eating more intuitively and more mindfully? Probably. Because we know that our bodies, they're pretty clever, right?
So
I
clever.
think we sort of overcomplicate it with all of these sort of ways that we can...
you're trying to regulate it with all the
Correct.
rules. Yeah.
And it just doesn't, our bodies will just do what our bodies want to do all day long.
It's amazing. Like, I know Linda Bacon is in your book and she's in Embrace, the documentary. I think she says it beautifully. They're big words, but, you know, us health professionals, we like big words.
Go for it.
She talks about your body being an amazing self-regulator. It's like you don't really have to calculate, well, I've exercised this much, so I should eat this much. If you listen to your body's natural cues, it'll do all of the maths through the ghrelin and the leptin, hunger and fullness hormones.
Yeah.
It'll calculate that out for you and it'll just tell you because you'll get hungry.
And isn't that remarkable? Like, that is the miracle of the body, right?
It is the miracle.
Everybody relax. Relax, your body's got you.
Yeah.
Your body has got you back. You know, this reminds me of, this is digressing, but I went to a hairdresser once. I was in LA and I needed to get my hair done for TV. Yeah. And I was really worried about going to like a random hairdresser. I thought, what could I end up with?
Could
like,
end up
am I
with
going to
anything.
walk out like Shirley Temple? I just want to, you know, just a casual curl for TV. Yeah. And she just put her hand on my shoulder and she goes, don't worry, I've got you. And I was just like, man, the level of comfort I felt just in those words.
The trust.
The trust. And this is the trust we need to have in ourselves and our bodies.
And I think that is a real key. I remember I did a workshop down at Philex, the fitness convention, and I was talking about intuitive eating and enjoyable exercise, and I presented what to me was like the good story of someone who had nailed it. And it's like this person was listening to their hunger and fullness, their weight had stabilized, so they were happy about that. They were enjoying food for the first time in ages. They were enjoying movement. And I said, how do you guys feel about this? And there was a few people like, this is really great. And there was one guy right up the front, he was a smart guy. He's like, oh my God, I'd be so worried for that client. And he said, what are they going to do without all of the rules?
Yeah.
And it kind of highlighted this point to me that I think that it's, for us as health professionals, we need to be incredibly trusting of our clients' ability, and they have to be incredibly trusting of their own bodies. Like, it's there's a real element of learning to trust your own body. If I don't regulate my eating with sort of some type of rules, or if I don't weigh myself, or if I don't have a set number of exercise sessions I have to do for a set amount of time, will my body actually take care of me?
And we know the data says, yes, it will, right?
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I think that's the message we really need to get out. Maybe that's what everyone can take from this, is that your body knows exactly what to do. Stop getting in the way of what your body wants.
And Taryn, can you tell us a little bit about what's been your personal experience of this? Because in your background, you've done the dieting, you've lost the 15 kilos, you've had the fitness body and everything, following all of the rules. You know that that's not the right path for you, like it's not for hardly anyone probably.
Sure, yeah.
But what was that journey like for you? And it sort of happened through your own exploration and through the documentary, and it seems like you've gotten to this absolutely wonderful place now where you I've heard you say before that you really don't have down days about your body. Reading your book, you've gotten more into the how-tos of how you do the intuitive eating and enjoyable movement. What has that been like for you to take that journey, and how hard or easy has it been to learn to trust yourself?
Look, I think it's, it's been, 4 or 5 years since I stepped off that stage, maybe 5 years. My gosh, where does time go? So yeah, I'm in this place now where I never have a bad day ever about my body. I'm so in awe of it. I'm so grateful for it, and you know, I feel really blessed, and just I have a very different perspective on it now. But look, in the earlier days, I guess it was a bit of an exploration of there's another way to think, and it was just really, I guess, educating myself and finding what are all the alternatives out there to being on this diet lifestyle and wanting to lose the last 5 kilos. I mean, my entire life was dedicated to losing the last 5 kilos. And look, none of that felt good. So I guess it was just finding the alternatives that did feel good. And yeah, I mean, my body now, it's probably it's the largest it's ever been, but it's really the healthiest it's ever been. I have more energy. I'm just really happy. I'm not, don't get me wrong, I don't want anyone to think, oh my God, she's always happy and full of energy. You know, because I have my shit days, or I have my shit times, or, you know, I say that just because of that whole...
I think it's important for people to know.
Correct.
Because people see you and you are so vibrant and you're so full of life, and that's obviously, it's authentic, it's real, it's
Absolutely.
you. But that doesn't mean that that's you 100% of the time.
No, I think last Monday I had to go, okay, I need to get under the doonas and watch a horror movie. I just need to give myself some, I needed to check out, and that's okay too.
So guys, if Taryn Brumfitt has bad days, you are allowed. This is your permission.
Thanks. Yeah. Awesome.
I even have clients say the same to me. They're like, "Oh, Glenn, I had this really, terrible experience, or this down week," and they're like, "You wouldn't have that." I'm like, "Well, why?"
Yeah, that's right.
Because even when you get this stuff, it doesn't stop you from being a human.
No, that's right. And I think the difference is that when you are really connected to your body and to you, when you have those moments, you allow them to unfold. You're not giving yourself a hard time for having a bad day. You sit in it. You go, oh, okay, something's going on. I took myself to the beach last year. I got out of the office. I went, I'm done for the day. Took myself to the beach, and then when I drove home, I was a different person from when that's
like Superman changing the boot.
It was just my body was craving just to be outside. My body was craving some vitamin D. I just needed to feel free. I got that, and off I went.
So there's a real element, Taryn, in here of listening. Whether it's about food or your physical movement or just caring for yourself, is actually listening to yourself.
Yeah, I think self-love and loving yourself, there is no greater love in your life than the one that you'll have with yourself. You know, like loving you and being your own best friend and backing yourself and being kind to yourself, that is key. That needs to come first above anyone else on the planet, is looking after you. And I think it's also just having that toolkit of what do I need to do to pull myself out of this funk, or what do I need to do, just to feel good, the sparkle activities or whatever it is. Yeah. Having that toolkit, we all need it.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting that you've been on this journey, and in your book, there are so many people who are living in all different sizes of bodies who have made this transition at some stage, and you see in the book at various stages in their life, to really almost forget about the scales and embrace the skin that they're in. And I think those stories are so important, because your story, the other people in the book and in the documentary, they show people that it really is possible. Because it's like you said before, people do get on this dieting treadmill, but they really see that as the only option. People don't necessarily know that there is another way, and they need people like you who show them there is another way, but that they can actually get there. Yeah. And it's not dependent on being a certain number on the scales.
That's right. But I think it's also You know, this conversation reminds me just a little bit about the disconnect that people are feeling. And when we talk about backing ourselves and believing in ourselves, no one knows our bodies like we know our bodies. And we've just got to empower ourselves a little bit more, that we know what to do. It doesn't mean we can't get guidance here and there.
Yep.
But the classic example for me is when there's a run, it's more of a walk, because it's very uphill, in Adelaide up to the top of Mount Lofty. And it takes about an hour to get up there. It's pretty strenuous. When I get to the top, I'm like, I made it, like I'm alive.
Top of the world.
Totally, that's in my head, because you can't do that. Well, you could. But all I see, I'm surrounded by people who are getting to the top and checking their watches, and they're like, click, click, and checking how many calories they've burnt. And look, I'm not saying that those watches and those Fitbits are all bad. I'm not saying that, but I do think we've gone a little bit far down the road of, rather than getting to the top of that mountain and looking at the view and just going, oh, how awesome. Just, you know, sitting in those endorphins and enjoying that moment, we're all of a sudden checking to see how many calories we've lost. Well, that's a real disconnect, I think, that people are feeling.
Yeah, it's really reducing physical movement, which your body is designed to do. It's a way of loving your body and honoring its ability to do whatever it can, into, this is just how many calories I've expended.
Correct. I saw an 8-year-old the other day going onto a netball court have an absolute tantrum because her mum was trying to take the Fitbit off her to go on the netball court. And I thought, oh my gosh, here we go. You know, how is that young girl going to go out in the netball court and just enjoy herself and be in that moment? And it's a big, big problem. And look, I run, and I listen to how I try to keep up to a certain pace. Otherwise, I'm like, Tara, that's a fast walk. So I have no problems with it. I'm just saying, let's have some balance around the use of Fitbits and technology. I
love that. And that's a great how-to for our listeners, because I know there'll be a lot of people, and because when I have these discussions with clients, they're like, yes, Glenn, but there's always this understanding of, or this thought of, you don't know my body. I can't trust my body. Every time I've trusted my body in the past or let go of the rules, then I've just spiraled out of control. But I think that's a really good how-to say with your physical activity is, let's forget about calories out. Let's forget about how many minutes you've done and just focus on the experience and how good it feels.
Yeah, to be really present, right?
Really, to be really present, because that's where you develop the trust. You're really listening to the body. And I think it's the same with your eating. I know that, before Taryn got here, she said, hey, Glenn, can we pop into somewhere that will have some food, because the options for brekkie at the hotel weren't that great. And it was you just listening to your body, you thinking about, having to deal with me and all these conversations, and that you needed energy. And
I needed a banana.
Yeah.
I needed a banana.
And but you didn't have to have a rule book or a nutritionist or a dietitian. You were just listening to the body and knowing that I need some of this particular type of nutrition. It's going to help me feel good. There were no rules.
That's right. Just listening in.
Yeah.
It really is quite simple.
We do overcomplicate it, don't we?
We do.
Yeah. So I think that's a great take-home message for people, is whether it's your eating or your physical activity, to start to listen to yourself, forget the rules, listen to yourself and trust your body, because it is an amazing self-regulator and it will figure out. I say to clients, you don't have to worry about what your ideal weight is, because your body will just do it all for you.
Yeah.
You just
Relax.
eat well. I remember you saying in one of your Instagram posts, it's like your ideal weight is, and correct me if I'm wrong, it was something like your ideal weight is the weight you are when you're living a life that you're happy with.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Easy,
Fantastic.
simple. And can I just, sorry, add one more thing, just about the activity and people moving their bodies. I meet so many people that go to the gym and hate going to the gym, and they just go over and over and over again. How is that empowering? How is that making one feel good?
It's like a punishment for being too unfit or too fat.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I just think we need to remind ourselves there are 1,000 ways that we can move our bodies.
Yes.
And there are sometimes I love to lift, lots of weights, and that feels good because that's where my headspace is at. Mm-hmm. There are other times where I need to be gentle. And the schedule might be crazy, and I need to give myself some extra nourishment, and I might choose to do yoga. Yeah. I think this is one of the things that people go, oh, I can do anything at any time. Yeah. Yes, you can. Go learn how to hip hop tonight, and then next week lift some weights, then dive in the ocean, climb a mountain, dance at home. We can all dance at home.
I'm totally on the same page as you, but it's weird for people.
Yes.
People are like, I've been to the gym twice this week. And people are like, so how often do you go to the gym? I'm like, well, sometimes 0, sometimes 3 or 4. And they're like, but what's your schedule? I'm like, well, there kind of is no schedule.
Yes. And there's the freedom right there.
The self-expression.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you this, Taryn, because something's come to my mind is that one of the things that pulls us out of listening to ourselves and loving ourselves are other people's opinions. So even if people kind of get this stuff for them, how do you be body positive? How do you embrace? How do you listen to yourself when you've got professional people sometimes and even people in your personal life who don't necessarily feel the same way, who aren't embracing the diversity of shapes and sizes that we all live in?
Yeah, well, I think we're really lucky 10 years ago finding a GP or anyone as a health professional who understands and believes in health at every size would have been near impossible, correct?
Correct.
There are more and more popping up everywhere across Australia, and that is really exciting. Yep. So maybe 10 years ago, ouch, not sure what to do. You have a choice now. Seek them out. They are out there. Yep. So that's in terms of the professionals.
I love that.
When it comes to friends and relatives, and I always ask people to make a pact with their friends. And it's not just you're at dinner and you start going, oh, hey, talking about body image, and then you have a little conversation. Create a space with your friends. Let's catch up for a coffee. I want to talk to you about something that's really important to me.
So a sit-down conversation.
That's right. But it's creating the space. It's not just like we're catching up for dinner on Friday night and I'm just going to raise it then, because it's not then elevated. If you call your friends and go, I have something I want to talk to you about and it's really important to me, everyone will be like, what is she going to talk about? All of a sudden it sort of elevates and creates this space for something really dynamic to happen. Yeah. So, and talk to your friends about the journey that you've been on, where you want to go, some of the conversations that you have and have had over the years that perhaps don't feel good anymore, and ask them, do you think that we could maybe, I don't know, put a ban on fat shaming and body shaming? Yeah. And I've done that with a bunch of my friends, and it's really funny and fascinating what happens, because we've been so programmed to make a judgment and to say something about other people or about ourselves. It just rolls off our tongue, right? A friend of mine we were going to Bali's a couple of years ago, and she was talking about bathers, and she immediately went, oh my God, I've got to go bather shopping and I hate my body, or whatever she said. And someone else called her out and went, that's not very embracing. And she's like, oh yeah, it's not. Oops. And then we just carried on. Yeah. Because we do forget because we are so programmed. Yep. So having a pact with your friends to start kind of removing the conversations that aren't helpful.
Yeah, we call that with our clients a no fat talk rule.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, but it's not just a blanket rule. It's about having the conversation and figuring out what works for you, because it's like we were talking about before. It's not a one size fits all.
Absolutely.
It's up to you as a group to figure out, well, there are these common ways we do to kind of hate on our bodies and judge other people's bodies, and that's not a great thing for us. So what do we want to do differently?
Yeah, and get really proactive. It's like calling a meeting. It feels really odd.
Yeah.
But if you want to do something and actually do it, and not just have the passing conversation, then create the space. Creating the space is important. It's like relatives. It's something that I suggest to many parents who their parents, the grandparents of the kids, say really unhelpful things.
Oh, yes.
It's like, ouch. The whole, oh, you're so pretty, or be careful what you eat, or just this messaging that is
or even just
really
that
bad.
You've gained weight, or that sometimes the grandparents just say it.
Correct. And as a parent, you just go, oh my gosh, like how do I? So again, calling up that parent and saying, I need to talk to you about something. It's really important to me. This is really upsetting me. And having that dialogue. Do you understand what I'm saying about how much it elevates that really important conversation?
I think that's such a powerful message, because it's different to just, and so many of my clients in the future are going to be hearing this, it's different to just calling someone out when it happens.
Yeah.
You're actually taking a pause point to say, let's create a space to have a real conversation.
Yep.
And create some real and lasting change.
Yep.
I absolutely love that. So when it comes to health professionals, this is not, 1990s. You are going to be able to find people. And even we have a lot of people that if they can't find someone in a small town, there are people you can see, dietitians, psychologists, even virtual trainers like Louise Green on Skype or online. So there are people that you can see.
Yeah.
When it comes to your network, elevate the conversation. And and I love that. Just that little, I think sometimes it's so important for people to have those little mechanisms. And I love those words of, I need to talk to you about something.
And make no mistake, it probably and might be a little uncomfortable too.
Yep.
But you think about it from a parent's perspective with their child speaking to the grandparents. Would you rather just have 10, 15-minute conversation that's a little bit uncomfortable? Or would you rather than having your child grow up, battle with their body and their weight? Same with friends. Friends who say unhelpful things. You just got to nip in the bud and say, no, we're not doing this anymore.
Yeah, I love that. And I often find sometimes I'll encourage clients to have similar conversations. I'm going to do it better now that we've had this conversation. But sometimes even I'm surprised. I might even have a child talking to her parent about this, and I'll think, oh, geez, the parent's pretty strong, pretty militant in their diet, and it's not going to go well. And they'll get, they've had a proper conversation, and they've been surprised with the result. Because of course, a lot of those people, they're sort of shaming the person without knowing it, or they're trying to help. So the people do want to help.
Of course.
It's just about helping them understand what's really going to help and support that person.
Yeah.
So the last thing I want to ask, and you've actually answered all of our audience's questions from our Facebook group.
Excellent.
But one I'm going to ask, because I have so many clients and no one's been brave enough to ask it, is specifically for women and specifically for single women. I see a lot of single women who feel like their bodies are getting in the way of them kind of finding the right partner. And some of them will kind of have actually had sort of feedback from people. It's like, you've got a really pretty face, or I think you're really lovely, but this weight thing is a thing for me. And, I kind of, when I hear that, I'm like, oh, you dickhead.
Yeah.
But then I'm sort of trying to grapple with the reality of these people are struggling. So what would you say to somebody who's worried about how the way that they look is going to affect their dating life and their ability to find a partner?
Well, this has come up quite a few times for me too. I've had people ask this question.
Yeah. And
I always throw it back and say, would you want to be with somebody who puts the focus on your weight gain or your weight loss? Is that really what you want as a foundation of your relationship? Yeah. And of course the answer is no. We want to connect and be with people because of who they are and the things that they do and the times and the joy that you spend and common interests and all of that's what makes a relationship. Not,
I love that. It's
someone's
not would
weight
you
gain
want me, but would I want someone
Yeah.
who is going to make that a focal point of the relationship?
Correct. Yeah.
That's so interesting, and that's a great point, Taryn. It speaks to this. I see a lot of people, probably most of the people that I see are in a relationship, and they're often worried that their bodies change over time. Will my partner accept my body? And I kind of say, well, if your partner's still with you and they're happy with you, then it's, it provides that safety net. But,
sure.
Of course people don't want to be with someone that I've got to be a certain size or shape or have this certain look for you to accept me.
It's pretty shallow, isn't it? To think that you would marry someone or want to be with someone just because of how they look.
It's amazing.
Think about Taria Pitt in the film. You know, how she changed. Taria, you know, how much her body and her face and every part of her changed. And Michael loves her because he loves her.
Yep.
Not because he loves her body or
And
the
Matt,
size of her
you
body.
know, you've been all shapes and sizes, and he's supported you the whole time. So interesting that you should say it's very very shallow and very superficial. One of my my mentor is a guy named George Blair West. He's a psychiatrist, and he specializes in weight and relationships. And he says something similar to what you've just said. He said, so if you want to find a partner and just look your very best to find a partner, and that be the basis of the relationship, he goes, you're going to get really good at selecting really shallow, superficial people who are going to be terrible relationship partners. So it's a great way to find a terrible relationship.
Absolutely it is. Yeah, it's let me just, it's setting you up for disaster and divorce if you're gonna. So find someone that just loves you and loves your spirit and loves, you know, the time that you spend together.
I absolutely love that. Taryn, thank you so much for spending this time with us. It's you know, the messages I'm getting out of this is learn to trust your body. Forget the rules, because your body can take care of itself. And in that context of trusting your body, get the right people around you, whether it's professionals, whether it's your social network, by making those pacts and having those elevated conversations. And also that extends to the new people that you choose to accept or not accept into your life.
Absolutely.
Now, I do want to just quickly talk about your book, because by the time that people get to this conversation, the book will be out. So much of the stuff we've talked about today is in the book in a lot of detail. I want to encourage everyone to go out there and read it. It's a brilliant how-to, and I love that. You're getting into, like what we've done today, some of the real nitty-gritty, and a lot of the things we've talked about today are covered in the book in a lot more detail. And there are some things that we haven't talked about, which I'm so happy we don't have time to talk about. Boobs and sex, and there's stuff about vulvas in the book. So it's so terribly shameful that we don't have time to talk about that. But
boobs, sex and vulvas. I love that. Everyone's going to be like, I need to go get that book.
Oh, okay. They'll be going, oh, yes, no, it's just for the body positive stuff. Wink.
Exactly.
Taryn, thank you so much for being with us and coming on the show. I hope everyone reaches out to you. If they haven't, if they've been sort of lying under a rock for a few years, they have to watch Embrace.
For sure.
And we'll definitely provide all the links for Embrace Yourself. It's a beautiful book. So thank you, and thank you for all the beautiful work you do.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure.